So, welcome everybody to Relationship Goals. I'm Laura McNally.
And I'm Camilla Ellerton.
And together we lead consumer marketing at Autotrader. But before we get stuck into the importance of relationships with your consumers and customers, we thought it might be helpful to explain our relationship. Sorry, that makes it sound like we're together.
In a work capacity. Happily married mother of two. Caveat. So we work what's called two in a box at Autotrader. So it's quite a known method of leadership where you have two people doing the same role, working together from different disciplines and backgrounds, collaboratively making decisions. So Marks and Spencer and Netflix do it at a CEO level. At Autotrader, we do it from a consumer marketing perspective. So I come a little bit more from a digital background, media, performance, and brand, and Laura
from an organic content and social perspective. So we kind of split it between digital and owned and earned channels.
Sorry, what's this called again?
It's called two in a box. Yeah. And it's kind of like this idea of dispersed leadership. So two heads are better than one. You've got different experiences. There's more cognitive diversity. The decisions might take longer to reach, but they're usually better informed.
We constructively collaborate. No, and it does really work. I mean, we're very fortunate that we'd worked together for a couple of years beforehand, and so came into the role together, which I'm not sure how much I'd like a totally separate, different person in my box, as it were. Anyway, now we've got that covered off. Let's get stuck into the reason why we're really here. And so post-engagement sales, so we're looking at how you interact with the consumer after the point at which somebody's made a purchase. But we will also touch on a little bit about pre-engagement as well.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, we've decided not to use slides. We are going to do a kind of radio-style interview between the two of us and just touch on a couple of the topics that we felt were most relevant and bring some stories into the conversation as well. So feel free to ask questions if you would like. So maybe...
Let's start. So could we start, Camilla, by hearing about your own experiences with post-sales engagements and why you think it's so important?
So I thought it was probably best to start not with a brand that I have an ongoing relationship with, like Peloton, who managed to... Another Peloton user? Oh, right, you work for them. Oh, okay. I think you do...
I do the post-sales strategy.
Well, you do a really good job, because I am very engaged, but I would argue, if you don't mind, it's quite easy to engage with the consumer when you've got a subscription with them, when you've got an ongoing relationship, and the harder ones, the ones where you do a one-off purchase. But how do you keep those consumers loyal and sticky to your brand, even when you don't have that subscription method? And so the one I chose was Majestic Wine. Lockdown was difficult. I have a set of twins. I was homeschooling. I just started a new role. It was pretty dark, so wine was a really good comfort. And my husband took on the decision to buy the wine, and thankfully all the wine purchases were logged and stored. And what it's made us do is end up, by default, going back to Majestic time and time again, because going anywhere else just feels too much high risk. So they've kind of increased the switching cost for us. And what they've done off the back of that, which you understand now working in marketing, but they've done a huge amount to send offers, wine tasting. And so suddenly I find myself in, like, Majestic Wine is my default wine sort of provider. And they've done that, I guess, just through a very simple mechanic. It hasn't taken a huge amount. It's not a big loyalty program. There's not a big club. There's not a huge fanfare about it. Just very simple order history connected in-store and online.
And how do you think those experiences and learnings can apply to someone like Autotrader, where the product cycle is so much longer? So on average, people keep their car for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, so unfortunately people don't buy cars like they do wine, or certainly not me. And so we do a lot around the browsing history, understanding what people are looking at, how they're going about their search, whether it be based on budget or type of car, and use that algorithmically to inform how we then personalise that experience on the front end. But most importantly, after the point at which you've made a purchase, you may or may not tell Autotrader that you've done that through our platform. So as you may or may not be aware, we have a huge dealer network, and we work with those dealers in order for those dealers to be able to sell the cars directly. So we might not even know whether you've bought a car. However, giving little mechanisms like MOT updates, anniversaries of your insurance, your service history, just provide that utility and that ease and that experience that, like Majestic, has made people connect into Auto Trader through those buying cycles. So now switching to you, Laura. How do you think organisations can strike a happy medium in their communications without being overly overwhelming?
So I think it depends very much on the business. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So your tone, your frequency, and the channels that you use are all really important. We're lucky at Auto Trader, so although the majority of our users aren't logged in, we do have kind of very key insights on their behaviour, and we're able to target communications based on that. So if somebody's on site looking at a BMW 3 Series, for example, we can then retarget them with BMW 3 Series stock or the review or the YouTube review of that vehicle. I also think that the consistency of your tone is really important. So we, I think, have been quite candid about the fact that we've gone on a bit of a journey recently as Auto Trader, and experiencing us on one channel, such as YouTube, could have felt quite different to how you might experience us on site. So trying to bring a lot more consistency across your experiences of the brand. It's something we're still doing as well, and I think it will be a process, but I think it's easy when kind of new channels crop up that you kind of want to gravitate towards and jump on, that you kind of go off in a slightly different direction to where your heartland lies. So focusing on that. And then asking for feedback. It sounds really obvious, but I think, we kind of get quite insular sometimes in meetings, thinking that we know what, the right frequency is, or that, when too much is too much, or when too little is too little. But just asking people. And I had an example last week when my brother-in-law sent me a screenshot of an Auto Trader email that he'd got about our electric car giveaway. So every month we give away an electric car, and one of the standard communications around that is that you're not the winner. And he showed it how it appeared alongside Deliveroo and one other company that he's subscribed to, and he had like 10% discount at Deliveroo, and the subject line from us just said, "You've not won this time." So he was like, there's no incentive for me to want to open that email, especially in light of what's around it. So I think just thinking about the context of where your messages might appear is also really important, and not to be overlooked. And it could be so different for so many people, depending on what else your inbox looks like. The way that it shows up there can be very different.
And what kind of mistakes do you think organisations make, in their post-sales engagement?
So I hope there's no one from Jet2 here, because I've got an example here. But so I've got an outstanding complaint with Jet2 because they lost my luggage. And then I can't think of anything worse when I get their emails saying, "Can you please rate your recent experience with us?" And then I get all the emails saying, "And these are our latest flight deals." And I know that they're different teams working with different objectives, but we'll come on to talk a little bit about the Braze platform. But having a technology provider that can help to ensure that doesn't happen, like if my confidence and trust in that brand is already at an all-time low, it's really not helping to then ask me to review them. So I think, and it shows that you're kind of, the right arm knows what the left arm's doing in a context like that, if you're more joined up in your ways of communicating. And then I think lack of personalization as well. So sometimes, I appreciate there's a need to get mass communications out, but as another example at Auto Trader, we've got an electric segment of people that we know are interested in sustainability and electric vehicles. That definitely wouldn't apply to the majority of our audience, because there's so many that are petrol heads that really aren't very into EV at all. And if we sent that at a mass level, we could really quite do damaging things to our engagement. So I think choosing when to personalize, knowing what's gonna hit the right audiences. And there's some examples of things where, for example, when the Queen passed away, and there was, quite clearly some communications that had been scheduled that people hadn't caught. So then they went out, or worse still, you jump on that trend to try and make your brand famous. So I think Anne Summers kind of came up against it, where they'd put a tribute to the Queen and then had loads of reduced toys underneath it. And for certain brands, that might drive more sales, but I think for other brands where your reputation is so hard to build but so easy to lose, it's a really key thing to look out for. Yeah. So back to you for some answers now. Do you have any effective ways to segment customers for pre or post-sales engagement that you could share with us? And what factors should be kept in mind as part of this?
Yeah, so Auto Trader is effectively a data and tech platform. So we're no longer a magazine. We gave away the magazine in 2013, and we've evolved into a tech and data platform. And as a result, a lot of homegrown platforms are kind of created in-house. And so our data scientists have done a huge amount of work to figure out the models and the algorithms that will best serve content to our consumers. So using our own 60 million cross-platform views a month to try and determine what might be the next action that they will take on our platform. So that's done a huge amount in that pre-sales experience. But post-sales, we have been on a bit of a journey. I think up until now, we've really only cared about audience. We're a marketplace, we sell our product based on audience, but now, like so many other organisations, we're looking at the full consumer, as I say, stitching on the hands, the arms, the legs and the body, to really create that full view of the consumer. And so doing that in a way that feels, again, really relevant and enables our content to sort of sing all the way through the different channels that we work on. So whether it be the anniversary of a car that you've just bought, or if it's helpful, informative information, I think the automotive industry is going through such a big transformation. By 2030, we'll all have to be thinking about electric cars, whether you want to or not. So informing and supporting the consumer on that journey, even before they even know that it's important to them, for us feels like a really relevant way to get our role as a brand into the consumers in between those buying cycles. Our app, for many, is a regular form of therapy, or car porn as some people call it, which is helpful because, of course, like Rightmove, you know, you're dreaming about the car that you may never be able to buy, but it also enables so many more communications. So we have 70% logged in users through our app, which, if you compare that to desktop, is just significantly less. So using a platform like Braze, as Laura touched on, to enable us to kind of send push notifications that feel relevant to whether it culturally, the time, the moment, a new ULEZ ban in London, to those people in London who are logged in and who have the app, would be a really kind of meaningful moment to talk to them. Ultimately, it's for us much more about kind of staying front of mind with relevant content. I think a lot of people talk about that, but actually relevance for a brand like Auto Trader can sometimes get a bit lost. We're not just about petrol and not just about those die-hard passion petrol heads, but actually we're all car buyers and we all have relevant content that we could be served. So trying to find those moments.
You touched on logged in users there. Could you possibly elaborate on that, particularly in light of the data challenges that many of us are now facing?
Yeah, so I think we, you know, again, thinking so much more about logged in users, but not just from an retention perspective, but acquisition. With my kind of performance hat on, we're not going to be able to do effective performance marketing without those logged in users. So thinking about the journeys that consumers are going on when we can surface a login, providing a value exchange for that. Really, why would you need to have a relationship with Auto Trader over a 3-year cycle, and finding that value exchange that the consumer feels really comfortable having. I think part of it also for us is just being very kind of responsible with that data and making sure that we're not overly communicating to consumers, which feels like in this environment where all brands are sort of scrambling to get first-party data. I don't know about you, but my email and app notifications seem to be going off the chart. So being the brand that doesn't overly communicate, I think is really valuable at this time.
And what role do you think that reviews and customer feedback play in building strong relationships with customers, and how can they be leveraged more effectively?
So we, you know, as a platform, as a marketplace, rely really heavily on reviews. We are entirely independent and objective. We actually don't care which car you end up buying or selling. As long
as it's right for you.
Yeah, as long as it's right for you and it's on our platform. But, you know, ultimately working with so many dealers, it's really making sure that they sing on our platform that's the most important. And to do that, obviously, reviews is the most effective way and feels like the most transparent way. I think using those to the best effect is really important. I don't think there's any point having a review platform on there if our dealers and our retailers don't take them seriously. So using it as a governance tool of our marketplace has become really important. As we transition to digital retailing and more of the transaction will be done online, using those reviews to potentially kick dealers off our platform if they're not adhering to the right kind of consumer experience standards that we'd expect, or that our consumers expect through that review process. Increasingly, brands are using reviews in their above-the-line communications, which I think is really interesting. I think that transparency is really going to help the relationship with consumers, and actually does a really good job on the employee side, as I'm sure we're all really aware of the Glassdoor reviews for our employees. It just creates that much more open relationship with a consumer or an employee that I think is going to only be more healthy as we start to do more and more online. And then, I guess, from my experience at ASICS, where I was before Autotrader, reviews have been a really powerful tool for our SEO. So ASICS has got a number of products. If you're runners, you'll know the gel Kayano and the Nimbus, long-standing products in their 55th year of being around. And so having that build-up of reviews of every make model over the years is really powerful SEO juice. So it just provides that background and that heritage to the trust that you want to build as a brand. So to what extent do you think content is valuable in retaining consumers? And do you have any examples?
I do. So I think community management is one that I was really keen to touch on here. So we have a big focus on community management on our social channels at Autotrader. And I guess from a return on investment point of view, a lot of those interactions might not mean anything on a mass level, but the power of them on a one-to-one basis can be really significant. So as an example, we used to play this game on Facebook called Autotrader Treasure Hunt. So we'd set a different criteria each week and ask people to go and find a car that spoke to that criteria. So we might say, I don't know, a retired university lecturer wants to go on a road trip to the south of France and he's got £10,000 to spend on a classic car that's got less than 100,000 miles on the clock. And it would encourage people to go and use Autotrader to find some suitable options. And then each week we would create a bespoke GIF to confirm our winner with their name on. And it's, I guess, quite time consuming for the level of reward that it would give, but in terms of lifetime value and the impact that could have, I think it's really worthwhile. And the way that we resource that at Autotrader is we've got 2 people that work interchangeably on community management and posting. And that just covers us, that if one of them was away, that we'd still covered for that skill set. And then there's another team in Manchester, which is where our head office is, where they are from the Voice of the Customer team, and they're dealing specifically with consumer queries or questions around things like that are more transactional in nature. So things like, I've uploaded my ad, but I can't see it. How long will it be before it's showing on site? That kind of thing. And then in a previous role, I worked at Red Bull, and we did a series there that was about getting to know the athletes a bit better, because everyone kind of knew them in these environments where they were, doing quadruple backflips on snowboards and things like that, but they didn't really know them on a personal level. So we set up a Facebook live series that saw them in kitchens creating their favourite dishes, but it was quite interactive in that people could ask and choose which ingredients they wanted to see the athlete add to those dishes. And just having that kind of influence and control over the output, I think, is really important for consumers, where they feel like they're having a personal impact, and they literally were being able to add ingredients into the dishes. It just brings them so much closer to the brand, and it for us enables us to humanize it as well. So it's a daily touch point where we can talk to consumers and get quite instant feedback as well. So sometimes we might be interested in their propensity to switch to electric, and we could just do a quick vote on an Instagram story and ask people and get quite a good read given the size of our audience. So.
And so how do you bake those engagements into the experience on Autotrader, or more broadly?
I think it's about the right content on the right platform at the right time, which is, I guess, like the holy trinity of valuable content coming together. But I think it's ensuring those teams are all talking to one another, and it's ensuring that one person is responsible for bringing the collective point of view together as well. So not just looking at metrics in isolation or outputs in isolation, but bringing them together and working out how to make decisions. And sharing that with stakeholders beyond just the marketing team as well, because I think we probably take for granted the impact that can have on the wider organisation.
We set up about 8 months ago, a content newsroom within our marketing team, and that has really transformed the way in which content's been distributed across all our different channels. So pulling in trends, data, information, cultural impetuses into a sort of war room style meeting that all contributors from PR, CRM, SEO through to above the line comms teams can pull on in order to create content. And there's been some really great output from there that might have been a social first piece, but actually translates really well through email. And so taking ideas from all parts of the marketing team to work together. To that end, what extent do you think personalisation is valuable?
I think so. I think the example of the personalised gifts, being able to, as an example, we do this monthly electric car giveaway now, and that gives us a regular touch point, especially when the buying cycle is so long. If it's 3 to 4 years, like, it's always relevant to try and win a car. So they can come back every month and try and do that. But we can personalise those communications. So we can say, hi, Katie, don't forget to enter our electric car giveaway this month, and then we can let them know when or how they can find out if they've won or not. But yeah, I think it's really important. And I think knowing just the competitor landscape as well, that, you know, everyone else is personalising their communications. And if you're not keeping up with that, you stand to lose.
So we've talked a lot about the kind of what and the why we should create great content. But how do we measure that really effectively? And how do consumers start to kind of see the impact?
So I guess it's another kind of classic, like, there's no one size fits all, and it depends on your organisation and your objectives. But I guess there's certain metrics that you need to kind of bring together. So the ultimate, I guess, goal with this piece is about retention. So what are your metrics for retention, whether it's opt-ins to your emailing list, your subscribers on YouTube, or your followers, whatever it may be. But again, it's bringing all of those things together. So not making rash decisions by looking at one output and not bringing it alongside the others, but bringing it all together and working out the best way forward.
And I think just before we finish up, we wanted to touch on perhaps an industry that we think gets it quite right outside of automotive or ourselves, because that would be a little bit like marking our own homework. And so briefly, I worked in fintech before Auto Trader. And I think what was quite interesting there is it's quite a complex industry to navigate. If anybody here is in banking, I don't envy you, because it is challenging. I think in the US, you leave college with a therapist and a financial advisor, and here you leave college with a complete taboo around how to run your own investments. So actually going through that process of trying to educate and inform consumers around investing, personal investing, and doing it themselves was quite a kind of formative process for me, because it sort of made me realise all those lessons of right place, right time, right audiences have never felt more important, especially with the kind of umbrella of a regulatory framework like the FCA that bear down on you. And I think what was quite interesting there as well is looking at those different segments. So if I translate that into Auto Trader, within investing, female investors are very highly served by the current industry. And I think similarly in all of our respective industries, I'm sure it's much the same, you know, younger car buyers for us, trail runners for ASICs. So how do you get into those individual communities, and how do you collaborate with content creators in order to make content that feels really right and bespoke for them? So I don't think you have to take it all on as a marketing team and craft it sort of to perfection within your own marketing teams, but doing that with other people. And I do think fintech has done that really well, and you can see the likes of sort of Barclays or AJ Bell really being challenged by Wealthify or Free Trade or some of these other more challenger brands. So actually having the collaboration and having the content working from within is really helpful. But hopefully that has been a bit of a whistle-stop tour of some of our experiences.